On today's edition of the CHGO Cubs podcast, the Cubs avoid arbitration with Kyle Tucker. They have agreed to a one-year deal. We've got more rumors flying, especially after a conversation with Jed Hoyer, and it is Cubs convention weekend. We'll talk about it all on this edition of the CHGO Cubs podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are coming to you on Friday. It is January 17th, and let's jump right into it, Brendan, because we spent most of the episode last week talking about it. It was sending Cubs Twitter into an absolute panic, but the Cubs do avoid going to an arbitration hearing with Kyle Tucker. They settle at $16.5 million. So nicely somewhere in the middle of the two figures that they exchanged, and we can all calm down. I know you didn't care at all, but everyone else can calm down.
I did not care. Maybe I knew about that, Corey, but yeah, I didn't care. It's good to see that being resolved. Now you have an actual number in mind. If there were 15 million and 17.5 million being exchanged, which is what they filed for, it does maybe affect how Jed would have preceded the relief market. If you're looking at 1 and 2 million as this decision between a lower tier versus more of a mid-tier reliever, that uncertainty does have an effect. So now Jed has that number. He can go into the Cubs Con, breathe a fresh breath of relief, of course, and get back into the free agent market and see now with that number, what makes the most sense to fill out this roster.
Yeah. And I did, of course you can take his words at face value or whatever, which is always the case. But, listening to the conversation, that was making the rounds on Thursday. And I know Cody and Luke talked about that kind of more in detail. But hearing Jed talk about how I think he said his heart didn't skip an extra beat because of, not meeting that arbitration deadline with Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
It did not affect his relationship with the agent. It did not reflect his agent or his relationship with the player. Like, this is just the process. And, again, we talked about it last week. Like, I know as fans, it might be easy to have that instinct to freak out about that or just say, why don't they just give him the $2.5 million? But I did appreciate hearing Jed going into like this whole process involves precedent. If we cater to that now, that affects all these other outfielders. It affects us. There would probably be like an ownership grievance there because the MLBPA is on the other side of these things, and they would love to have an ownership group that was just like, well, this player's great and he asked for more money, so we gave it to him. So I know the whole thing is not what fans want to hear. And we talked about that. It would be nice to just like roll out the red carpet and do whatever Kyle Tucker wants in the, kind of end goal of keeping him here long term. But ultimately, this is just part of the process, and it was just a little extended part of the process. And ultimately, I think the real key is that they did not actually go to the hearing, because I think all of that, you and I talked, like, doesn't really matter. It shouldn't affect things long term. It's just the business. It's the Cubs didn't invent arbitration. But if you go to the trial, you have to make the argument for why they deserve less money.
It would have been all injury based anyway.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it doesn't have to be harsh. You don't have, sometimes it's harsh and contentious, but it doesn't have to be. But you'd prefer to avoid that part if you can. So nice that this is done. And, he said they haven't really started any conversations about an extension. They will, but we can put this behind us, and now I'll start worrying about whether he signs an extension.
He was asked, was that extension talk in mind when the arbitration didn't get to the finish line. And Jed basically said, no, it was not.
Yeah.
And then Jed's discussion about the sales pitch being Wrigley Field has not even happened yet. Once the season starts, he's in the environment, he sees the fans, he sees the city life, the new lifestyle. That is what Jed said is the sales pitch.
Yeah.
And so once the season goes along, you get an idea of where the team stands for 2025, but also projecting 2026. Then it becomes more clear. If we look at the Cubs roster now, there's uncertainties at third base, uncertainties in center field, seeing what PCA's actual value is going to be. There's uncertainty with Michael Busch at first base. You have the corners and center field having some degree of uncertainty. Then the starting pitching staff, Tyone's getting older. We have the whole wind effect or the ballpark effect at Wrigley and the pitching staff. That needs to be ironed out. And the more certainty happens once you get towards the summer. And let's say in a great scenario, PCA pans out, Busch pans out, Shaw pans out. Then Jed may be more inclined to give that $400-ish or so $1 million contract because now you have stapled into your roster pre-arb cost controllable players for 5+ years, making that decision way easier. Making that decision now, from Jed's perspective, is probably not wise, which is what he's probably thinking. So it goes both ways. The sales pitch being Wrigley and having more information that once they understand the roster, they can be more willing to give out that type of money.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine if I'm Kyle Tucker and, you're experiencing Wrigley Field, the Ivy, a beautiful Chicago summer, and he's looking around and he probably sees me, eating my hot dog, cheering on our feet in the 4th inning because it's a full count. I feel like if he goes into the season thinking, I want $400 million, he experiences some of that and is like, maybe I would do the Cubs for, 350, 375 because I love it here. It's great. These people are awesome. These fans, specifically you, Corey.
Yeah, you only. But the city life does matter. Also, Jed was talking about there was a time in which he thought he may leave the Cubs under Theo to go be a president elsewhere. And Jed pointed to, hey, I got my family going in Chicago. We were settled in. He was comfortable with the Chicago lifestyle. Yeah. So you easily can imagine it happening to Kyle Tucker. Settles in, comfortable with the lifestyle. And to your point, do I go to Toronto for $400 million? Do I go to...
You don't want to do that, Kyle.
Yeah. Do I want to go to San Fran for $400 million? Or do I want to stay put in Chicago in my comfort zone and maybe accept a fraction less than what I would make elsewhere? That's what John Lister did, by the way. He turned down San Fran to go to the Cubs in 2015.
That is correct. Yeah. And I mean, I also liked hearing Jed, talk about, he mentioned at one point, he was like, listen, like the results of this season, affect my contract. I don't have a contract. So yeah, of course, I want this season to, just sort of addressing some of the kind of concerns that people have about how they're operating and all that other stuff. So, but, on the Kyle Tucker thing, it's nice to have this behind us. That was really my main sentiment in the first place, was like, I don't think this matters.
Well, you were a little annoyed. I mean, let's be
I was like, I'd rather have read the tweet that they agreed and we're just not doing it.
Now you got it. You just had to wait 1 week.
I know.
Was it that big of a deal?
Well, I'm impatient.
I can tell you're impatient.
I'm impatient, but it's nice to have us behind us. And yeah, I don't think it has any bearing going forward. He's, as Jed said, he's got to play at Wrigley. He's got to meet this team, meet his new teammates, see how that all goes. And then ultimately whether the Cubs are actually in that conversation come, the end of the year and offering what it's going to take.
Well, it may come before that.
Sure.
Again, you never want to take,
but sure.
Yeah. You never want to take, discussions you have with the media as gospel, but it did sound like the sentiment was, if there was an open window to negotiate during the season with the relationship he has with their agency, they could have visited it then. Now, is that going to happen? Is Kyle Tucker's side saying, oh, yes, we are open exactly in July and August? We don't know. Maybe he bats 320 with 40 home runs in July. He's putting up Barry Bonds numbers and he's going to get Juan Soto money, right? We have no idea. But I feel as if that relationship with the agency and Jed and the Cubs ideal outcome from their roster position could align perfectly.
Yeah.
And that extension is very possible before he even hits the open market.
Well,
It would cost more though, probably.
unfortunately, I was told by many folks on Twitter that they destroyed the relationship by not agreeing to the arbitration 6 days ago. So unfortunately,
Oh, man.
that's over with. So
No, that's done. Okay. I thought he was off the team. I thought not agreeing to arbitration means you're
Well,
off the team, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
transitioning to us, I before we hit our first break, I feel
That's
like
a
it's a good
joke, by the
time
way.
to talk just a little bit about CubsCon, and then we'll talk about some of the rumors and finishing off this roster. I'm looking forward to like seeing Kyle Tucker as a Chicago Cub. I would say of the things I'm not going to be attending CubsCon. I know you're not even in the state, so you're not going to be attending CubsCon. I know
You
our
don't
guy
know
Cody
that.
will be there.
Maybe I'm on the list.
And if you're attending, I hope you have a blast. I've been in the past. There's a lot to do, a lot to see, a lot of great people to go see and hang out with from the Cubs sphere. But I'm excited to see Kyle Tucker exist as a Chicago Cub. I would assume during the introductions, we'll get him in a jersey and the hat and just being around, like, give me that picture of like Nico Dansby and Kyle Tucker or whatever, like whatever combination you want. I'm just looking forward.
Who would be the first picture he's with? Which teammate will be the first picture? My guess is Dansby.
It's got a Dansby or maybe Ian Happ. You know what I mean?
I could see Ian.
Happ feels
very
aggressive
corporate
on the content front.
Oh, I can see that. Well,
He knows that's the money picture.
Yeah, there's no chance. There's no chance Nico does that. Nico's too cool for that. Doesn't want to do the contents.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought though.
Or it could be PCA. PCA is a sleeper on that.
Okay,
regards.
Outfield buddies.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. I'm curious what like photo Kyle Tucker could take if you did like a beta test. Him and who gets the most like social media?
I have your answer.
Engagement.
I already have your answer. It's an easy one.
Shota?
Sammy Sosa.
Oh, yeah, right.
I mean, should I be hired to do the Cubs PR correct. Right now? I should be hired to do the Cubs PR. How brilliant is that an idea?
Oh man, yeah, that's an instant banger. Yeah,
right.
And then like, you copy it like, I don't know. I'm trying to put my brain on. It's what I do for a living, but something about right field. You got to have like something like that in there.
Yeah.
Right field on fire or something, with the
like
fire
the Sammy
emoji.
Sosa thing, do a little video of Sammy Sosa.
Man.
Oh man.
So, but like speaking on CubsCon, if you were looking at the list of everybody that's supposed to be going, the Cubs put out a tweet that has like the current roster, team executives, prospects, alumni, who would be like the one person. I feel like outside of Sammy Sosa, Sammy Sosa's like first involvement in quite a long time. Who's like the first person you would love to, I don't know, run into, get an autograph from, take a picture with, here at one of the panels? Who's if you are picking one player, like this is the guy?
Well, I can't pick your guy because you're the one who mentioned it to me. I didn't even know he was going to be there, Derek Lee. If you were not involved, I would pick Derek Lee. He personifies, personifies that era of me growing up. I will say it is a sleeper pick, and it doesn't have to do with the value he produced. But when I first started watching the Cubs, John Lieber was like, was one of the first pitchers I remember. It was him and Kevin Tapani. And I would just like to ask questions about that early 2000s team because that's how I got into it. So I think it would probably be John Lieber just to have a conversation with. And that's just personal nostalgia for me.
I got to tell you, like looking at this list, it seems like highly. Now, I don't know if the guys have good relationships or not. I'll leave that to them to figure out. But like, I got to tell you, I'm not mentally prepared. It seems like a non-zero chance that we're like minding our business over the weekend, maybe tomorrow. And like, we're sitting on social media and we are forced to look at a photo of a reunited Sammy Sosa, Aramis Ramirez, Derek Lee, Kerry Wood.
No, you just need Moises Alou to complete that up.
I don't
entire roster.
Where's
Moises, by the way?
Literally, even just saying that, I like am now mentally in a bad. There's something about that makes me feel very weird. The idea of seeing them all together again, because you and I have talked about this a bunch. Like this group held in the
What
highest
does that say?
regard.
What year is
This,
that?
I don't think this says champions, does it?
Oh,
No, but
okay.
it's just about the World Series and the Cubs. They did win that World Series though.
What year
So
was that?
2016.
Okay, 2016.
There's a patch on the Lester jersey behind me.
What does the patch say?
Just keep doing it. This team gets held in the highest regard ever, right? But I feel like I've expressed this before, that like growing up as someone born in the early 90s, that is 12 when they lose to the Marlins in the NLCS, like you kind of enter a period where like you have so much of your life, it's like almost a decade where like it was supposed to be those guys, Like it was, how many times did you picture all of that happening with Derek Lee and Aramis Ramirez and Sammy Sosa? Like I'm not taking anything back. I would run 2016 back. I don't want to change anything, but you just sort of grow up with that mentality of like, it's going to be these guys. It's supposed to be these guys,
Well,
which I feel like is why like 2008 is so like sort of painful in that way, like not just getting eliminated, but it also felt like it's like, oh, it's not going to be these guys. Like maybe we really are never going to see this happen.
And it turned around for the worse so fast.
Yeah.
After 2008. So, and that was the first year where the Cubs were so good, like early on in the season. 2003, 88 win team. They got hot in the playoffs. 2004 just collapsed. And then 2007, 84 or 83 win team. They kind of snuck in. 2008 was my first quote unquote juggernaut-esque type season as a Cubs fan. So I'm like, oh, if they don't do it here, they're never going to do it at all. So that was one of my most devastating seasons just from any season. The expectations there.
So anyway, if I have to look at a photo of any combination of them, really, because like we've seen Derek Lee and Aramis together previously, like more recently than that, but like Sammy hasn't been there. So like, I don't know if I'm prepared for that.
Well, the Sammy and Kerry Wood picture will be good too. Actually, you know what I'm not prepared for? And I'll do the ad break after this. But once the dust settles and they're out of baseball, that Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood picture.
No. Don't, please. I'm like going to start crying on here. I literally can't remake.
They can remake the Sports Illustrated fire. I'll have to quit the show right now. I can't do the show. I'm done.
We have gone down a really melancholic path here, but we're going to hit our first ad break here. Then when we come back, we'll talk rumors, the rest of the offseason, everything like that. Before we hit that ad break, though, like if you're watching on YouTube or if you want to tweet at us, like drop your answer to that question. Like of all the people past, present, attending, and I guess future too, attending CubsCon, like if you're outside of Sammy Sosa, like the guy that you're like, this is why I go to CubsCon. Like I'm going to CubsCon to just hear this guy talk or see him in the hallway or anything like that. Whether that's Derek Lee, Pat Hughes, sure there's some, I bet our guy, Evan Altman, I know he's going this weekend. He's probably hoping, he's there to see Crane Kenny. I know that, so whatever you want, whoever you're there to see. So, but yeah, let's hit our first ad break and then we'll come back and talk the rest of the Cubs offseason here.
Okay. Game time. Game time is easier than ever to get tickets for any game, concert, events that you want at the most affordable price. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. You can use the app features listed in customize your spots section of the app. You can see where your seats are located in any location inside the stadium. There's also a toggling feature that shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. I use Game Time for any sporting events. I've used it for the past 2 years. It's the easiest one. And I have nothing but good things to say about Game Time. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hooters is the destination to watch the game with your friends. It's where you can simply enjoy hot wings, cold beer, and experience like no other. Start the new year with a great deal that warms your wallet. Grab Hooters chicken tenders and fries, or chicken tender tacos and fries for just $9.99 each. And you can't forget about the Hooters $6 legendary margarita, available all day, every day. 9 out of 10 Hooters girls agree that eating Hooters wings while watching the game will help you win. So you can cheer on your favorite team from any of the 11 Chicagoland Hooters locations. Maybe we'll see you at the one in O'Hare. You can even order online for pickup and delivery. So check them out at originalhooters.com.
All right, Brendan, we're back with you. And I actually just dropped a link for you to look at. But as we are recording this, it appears that the Cubs have announced they have a new blue alternate uniform.
You're kidding.
And you are a psycho.
You're kidding.
Uniforms. I want to get your live reaction.
I mean, I just turned on the video right now. So what do we got here? It's a 45-second video.
You could skip toward the end for the reveal of the jersey.
Oh, gee, I just blasted the audio in my ear. What do we got here? All right, so let's see. Is it light blue?
It appears to be.
I'm gonna have to really soak this in. It's not what I was expecting. What am I looking at over here, dude?
I like that a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you.
You like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can get behind it. I thought it was going to be.
This. I don't know. I'm assuming there's no way for you to show this to the folks on YouTube.
No,
you can watch it. But
I mean, the Cubs logo.
I like the logo. I like the color. Yeah, I'm into it.
What color are their pants?
Well, that I don't know. And
I can't tell with the
shade. A certain point, we're getting into bad audio territory because we're not really doing our best.
Well, it's not my fault.
Pat Hughes, Benjamin Moore uniform description, but I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it.
Legendary
for a second,
blues.
I thought we were going back to the 1980s with those alternate blues. I didn't realize we were going to go back to the light.
It looks like it looks like a hybrid of things.
I do like it. You're right about that.
Yeah.
The Cubs logo has that vintage vibe to it. That thin stroke outline.
Well,
to
and
it.
let's see. Like all things, let's see how. I'm gonna have to see how it looks on a player. At beautiful historic Wrigley Field, but I think it looks cool.
I think the pants are white.
I don't know about that.
I'm not sure I like the hat. We'll see. It's hard to see with the colors. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. I just wanted your live thoughts on that.
That's what it was. It's a dangerous reaction.
Curious what everybody else thinks. I'm looking through kind of the responses. There's a lot of differing opinions, as there would be. But getting into the rest of the offseason. So now, again, you don't have to take Jed at his word, but, in the conversation, along with talking about Kyle Tucker and arbitration and all of that, he did really kind of hammer home the idea that they are still looking at the bullpen market. They're looking at the free agent market to help the bullpen. And he, was pretty clear to use the word supplement what it felt like for the rest of the roster. So by no means is that a guarantee, but I feel like most people listening to the interview came away with the sense that they may look at the free agent market to bolster the bullpen, maybe other avenues as well. But as far as position players, depth at third base, starting rotation, supplemental moves, like we're not talking about them trading for Sandy Alcantara. Now, he wouldn't admit that if they were doing that. But going off of the language that he put out there, they are not done in their offseason. But if you are waiting on Alex Bregman, it does not sound, and I don't just say that one in particular because Jed said it, but when you square everything that the beat writers have been saying or how they're responding to different questions and things like that, along with Jed's comments, that certainly seems like the direction that the rest of this offseason is headed.
They are $45 million away from that first tier of the luxury tax. If we assume that Bregman will make $30 million, that leaves the Cubs at just 10 to 15 million in wiggle room. If it's 25, it's only 20 million in a wiggle room before the first tier. If they want to bolster their bullpen, the cheapest guy to do that with projected value would be 3 to 5 million. If they want to shore up infield depth, similarly, 3 to 5 million. So Bregman plus relief help plus one infield or outfield depth piece puts you at the cusp of that first tier. They have not operated like that in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't imagine that's going to happen. Also, too, more than ever, and Jets said this over the past year, that the amount of information with rumors and reports that you and I, the public fans, see, he explicitly says that agents feed that, and he himself is weighing that less than he used to years ago. So, to your point, Bregman has not signed in the middle of January. You push out narratives. The Cubs might get involved. They have 45 million and a hole at third base. You heard no reports about the Cubs explicitly being involved. So what does that make you think? Are they involved, or is this a push to give Bregman a contract from any team? I would bet the latter. So with that in mind, I would be shocked if Bregman's a Cub. I have not even allowed myself to truly imagine that as a possibility, because I genuinely believe that is not going to happen whatsoever. And in fact, after hearing Jet talk and seeing how the offseason's played out, I'm starting to believe that they may not even go out and get a $20+ million starting pitcher in Jack Flaherty. And the reason for that is if they sign Flaherty, again, 25 million, then you don't have a lot of money to make those bullpen moves. Kirby Yates is projected at 14 million. Tanner Scott projected at 15 to 18 million. You need a third base option for Shaw. It doesn't align with their current payroll projections, and that's explicitly why they traded Bellinger to free up that 28 million. I don't see Bregman happening. I'm less inclined to believe that even Flaherty is going to happen, and I take Jed's word to be a sliver of the truth that it's going to be bullpen help and positional depth.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think things like, Bregman or Pete Alonso, or I mean, even Jack Flaherty, right? Like, they're interesting, but it's definitely always felt like a situation where the only way that happens if the market totally comes to the Cubs. And
even then, dude,
even then, but I'm saying, like, I was seeing some of the pushback on the Bregman stuff from, likely, his agency and his representatives, but just being like, this is a championship level player. Like, he's not taking a 1-year deal. Like, we're going to find that deal. That's what he's worth. Like, we're not doing one of these contracts like that. Now, whether they can find it or not, I don't know, but it does feel like we've seen this before, earlier in the offseason when all that Seiya trade stuff was happening. And then conveniently, all of that Seiya trade stuff, rumors and discussion, it's weird, Brendan. It all stopped the minute Teoscar Hernandez re-signed in Los Angeles. Isn't that weird?
Look at that.
That there was a rumor every day that the Cubs basically hated Seiya Suzuki and they were desperate to get rid of him. And the second Teoscar Hernandez went back to Los Angeles, never heard a peep out of that ever again.
That was that.
Interesting.
Well, it validates all those thoughts that you have a lot of media pushing of narratives in order to get your deal, as they should. Even Wolf, Seiya's agent, talking about how Seiya wants to play right field and not DH. Yeah. That's no ill will towards the front office. That's him doing his job. Yeah. Their job is to get the most money possible. It's exactly what I'd be doing too.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of, like, Bregman's agency or whatever being like, all right, we need the Tigers to pony up for this. Like, who's a team that has money and doesn't have an everyday third baseman right now? And they're like, the Cubs. Yeah, the Cubs. Tell John Heyman, the Cubs. I like the idea of thinking of how that's
why wouldn't she do that? It makes a lot of sense.
Of course it makes a lot of
sense.
Right?
So all that said, I would not buy mentally into the Bregman situation at all. Don't let yourself do it. Don't let yourself do it.
Yeah, it's a completely different thing, but I don't think I ever had any hope or feeling that they would get Roki Sasaki. So, like, when they were knocked out of that, I was
I kind of bought into that one.
Yeah, and I never really got into that. So,
well, I thought the whole selling point was Shota, but anyway.
I hear you, but I never allowed myself on that one. So we'll see. Again, like, you never know. Sometimes these markets crater. Sometimes it gets close to spring training and push comes to shove, and it's who knows? But I'm not counting on that. I think the pivot of the discussion is like,
So who do they sign?
well, who do they sign? How do they address the bullpen and whatever? And then I think, where I am right now, and since you and I last spoke, we do have to get your thoughts on Colin Ray, and just what you think there. But I think I have such a weird feeling overall about this offseason, because I feel like even right now, I think the team is in a better place than it was going into last year. I feel more confident in certain things. But looking at the way they've decided, at least for now, to go about handling the rotation, I do not like, nor do I agree with it at all. They opted for lower depth in several different guys versus a higher end, top of the rotation starter, which is what I would have consolidated the money into one player.
You love that word.
I do.
I can tell.
And I'm fine with where they are on offense. I'm fine with Carson Kelly. A little risky, Amaya Kelly, but I think you've raised the floor from where you were at last year. I also don't. I like the idea of giving Miguel Amaya more of an opportunity. I think a lot of people forget that that's a guy who dealt with a ton of injuries in his minor league career and coming up, and just the time to take on that workload and really adjust to being a major league hitter. Like, I'm into continuing to let him kind of build on the momentum that he has. Shaw, we agree, like they need some sort of depth there, or some sort of insurance, whatever. But overall, I feel better about that. I just feel like I'm looking at this offseason from a perspective of like, if you're, when you trade Bellinger to get more money, you end up saving money in the exchange of getting Kyle Tucker. I'm looking at everything going like, is this all, knowing what we know now? And of course, there's still runway in this offseason. Like, was this the best way to divvy up all of this money? And when I look at things, I'm like, I'm not really sure. And then, you're squaring that with our usual ownership and business operations thoughts. They shouldn't be giving Jed a threshold, below the first tier of the luxury tax. They should be spending more money. They should be doing what's necessary to make the team unquestionably better. They're not. We can yell about that every week, and we do every week, but it's not going to change. So this is just what it is. And then also squaring that with the idea that at some point, like if I was Tom Ricketts, I would be like, listen, dude, I give you $200-something million a year to try to beat the Brewers. You can't. I'll give you 300 when you can figure out how to beat the Brewers with, the extra money that I'm already giving you, and like, justified or not. So I'm trying to like square all of that, because when the Bregman thing is one thing, but when I read the thoughts, and I felt this way when they signed Colin Ray, like, I don't know, man, like giving out these smaller deals, one to a guy you're hoping comes back from injury. And, even in those discussions we hear from them, like, oh, if they could give if Matthew Boyd could give us 120 innings, it's like, that's a big if. And like, that's the big addition to the rotation. A guy that you're sitting here saying like, well, now hold on, if he can give us 120 healthy innings, like, I don't know. I feel like the team is better, and I feel like they're close, but I feel like as I'm looking back at things, I'm not positive that I love the individual ways that they've divvied up what apparently is the limited budget that they have. We do have to hit our second ad break, so I don't know if you wanted to respond quickly there,
I'll
or you can
respond. Let me do the
respond
ad break,
after.
and I'll give
But
you. I'll give you
we'll
thoughts after
keep
that.
talking about that. I mean, we're talking about the offseason and how they finish it off. So we'll do that when we come back from the ad break.
Okay, Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that will not break the bank. They probably have a style in your favorite team's colors. You want a pair of blue sunglasses to go with those new blue alternative Cubs jerseys? Shady Rays has you covered. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection program in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange them for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. Shady rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Rugged Road. Rugged Road is dedicated to outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Our products are designed with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, ensuring they perform with the toughest conditions, whether you're on land or water. Rugged Road is built to accompany you on every adventure. They have, unlike other heavy-duty coolers, a lightweight design. Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easier to transport on any trip without compromising on performance. They are perfect for outdoor activities, from fishing to tubing to camping to tailgating. These coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor or sports enthusiast. So gear up for the next adventure with Rugged Road coolers, reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com. Use code CHGO for 10% off.
All right, Brendan. So yeah, I mean, I guess just your thoughts with where they're at, and I guess it's a little early to do it, but if you were looking back at this offseason and taking some of the reports and Jed and all this stuff at face value and saying like, yeah, like the rest of the offseason, I think they're going to supplement the bullpen, get a, again, supplemental bat to go at third base and to be on this bench, and maybe, more depth akin to Colin Ray for the rotation, if anything. How would you feel about that? How would you feel that they'd have done in this offseason?
The question I ask is, what is the most projectable value for $20 million? Is it Colin Ray plus Matthew Boyd?
No.
Or is it Jack Flaherty? Or is it reducing 2 bullpen arms for $10 million and giving out $30 million to Corbin Burns for the next 6 years? What is the best path forward? So there's 2 perspectives for me. It's how the front office is thinking about this versus my fan-based opinion, which is more short-term thinking. Jack Flaherty has injury concerns. The Yankees turned him down due to medicals. He's, over the years, had some variability in his success as well. He's not what you would describe, Corey, as a bona fide top of the rotation guy. So spending the projected $25 million for him, whether it be in a 1-year deal, maybe a 3-4-year deal, may not be to the Cubs' best decision. So what's the alternative? Well, it's Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray. So the caveat with Matthew Boyd is he does not have a recent history of innings, only pitched 39 innings last year, 50 plus in the playoffs, does not have that base. Okay. Now let's go over to Colin Ray. What's the caveat for Colin Ray? Well, even though he pitched 170 innings, he had about over a 4.5 ERA. So one pitcher has pitched a full slate of Major League Baseball, and the other pitcher has not, and their success are on complete opposite sides of the spectrum. The way I look at this overall is I need to ask myself the question, how do I fill between 810 innings and 1,300 innings for an entire season from the starting rotation? Okay. So really around 920 innings. How do I get 920 innings? And the way the Cubs are mapping this out is you have Shota at 180, Steele at 170, Jameson at 170, Javi Asada at 120, Boyd at 120, and Colin Ray at 110. Then you have Jordan Wicks, Ben Brown, Caleb Killian, and Nate Pearson as your backup. Is that enough depth? Intuitively, it's a little bit shaky for me. I, like you, would like to consolidate that war. But at the same time, I'm not sure that exists And if it ever existed in the free agent market, would I have given out the Corbin Burns contract? Yes, I would. But there's some risk there as well.
Sure.
And it represents just a total risk of any pitcher currently. That makes me want to go out and get someone like a Luis Castillo. Now, the pushback there is Castillo's 34, 35 years old. Is he going to last deeper into his age? We don't know. But it's a shaky time. And the Cubs are betting volume over consolidating WAR. And the bet specifically is that expectation of consolidation of WAR for starting pitchers is not confident. I understand that process. I'm not particularly fighting for Jed's decision-making here, but I understand what they're thinking. It also leaves room open for if the team does perform well, you can get that starting pitcher at the top end of the rotation for a playoff push in July.
Yeah, I hear all that. And like I said, I genuinely feel the team is better than they were last year. They have improved the team. And I think if they finish off this bullpen and the moves that we keep talking about, I think they'll be in a decent spot. I guess I just feel like, and this is not just on Jed. Obviously, he's given the budget that he's given, and apparently it's rather strict. And again, we can be as upset as we want.
Well, let me ask you a question just to reduce it down.
Sure.
So the way I hear you is you want more money tied up into one player, right? That's fair. That's fair to say. Versus Boyd and Colin Ray. So the question I'm going to pose to you is, let's subtract out a seventh inning reliever that they signed in free agency. Okay. So let's subtract out Boyd, Colin Ray, and the seventh inning reliever in free agency. Would you trade those three guys for Jack Flaherty on a 3-year deal for $24 million per year?
Not Flaherty specifically.
Okay. So would you trade that for the 1-year Nick Pivetta type situation for $21 million? You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. I hear
I'm not arguing for that being the best case forward.
I guess, and again, the players available are the players available. Like the players that, they may have had really good conversations with the Twins about someone like Pablo Lopez. They may have had really good conversations with the Marlins
I'd be
about
floored if Pablo Lopez is on the team.
Sure, but what I'm saying is like Jesus Luzardo or Sandy Alcantara. But if it takes two to tango, if those teams don't want to trade those players, there's nothing you can do. And like the free agent pool is what it is. So I understand all that. But what I was going to say is like, it does feel like they hit such a home run in the Kyle Tucker trade. It's such a good trade. The trade we've been waiting for them to make for years. They trade Bellinger for salary relief. To use a like horrible like football analogy, it feels like the running back broke off a 75-yard run to get to the 2-yard line, and you are just going to settle for the field goal. That's what this sort of feels like. You made such an aggressive, excellent move in getting Kyle Tucker and what that does for your team and just how that improves your overall projection. And then you get rid of a good player to save the money. And I'm just not feeling like that value is there from that point. And again, what the other avenues are and what they do with the rest of this time can obviously change that. But I feel like when you look at the rotation, the reason that we harp so much on potentially adding to that is you have the age of some of these guys, Shota, Tyone. I mean, even Steele is not 25 years old anymore. And you're banking on Shota in year 2. And I have all the confidence in the world, especially in Shota Imanaga and Justin Steele. But Shota Imanaga was a top 1 pitcher in the league for like the first 3 months of the season last year. He was really, really good in his first year. What does that look like in his sophomore season? What adjustments, etc. Justin Steele has dealt with these little injuries and things like that. And he's given you a few great seasons that overall you've wasted with the team around him. Is he able to keep that up? Is he able to stay healthy? Is he able to pitch at that 1 or 2 level? Jamison Tyone was good for you last year. Nice rebound, but he's in his mid-30s. What does that look like? How does he keep that going? Just feels like there's volatility in that rotation potentially, Again, I have all the confidence in the world that we're going to be sitting here at the end of the season feeling really confident. Hopefully this team is playing at least a playoff game or two. And Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga are going to be the ones leading them there. And I would love to give either of them the ball on the mound in a playoff game. So don't twist my words that I don't believe in them. But to suggest, it just feels like you're banking another guy in the top 3 there would take a lot of pressure off them. And I just feel a lot better about that rotation. It also puts you in a spot where instead of being able to look at guys like Assad and Wicks and hope that they can kind of lift you up if Jordan Wicks is healthy and really comes into his own at the MLB level, that's kind of a bonus. But where it's slated now, it's like you need some of these guys have got to produce. They have got to stay healthy. They have got to produce. If it's Javier Assad's shot, he's got to be able to go past the 4th inning. Jordan Wicks has to stay healthy. Matthew Boyd has to stay healthy. Again, Jed's working with the budget. And ultimately, at the end of the offseason, we'll see what he did and judge it.
He'll be judged on it.
I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, I echoed a lot of other people's feelings when the Colin Ray signing happened, where I was like, I don't think I love what this implies about how they're building this pitching staff. The depth is really nice, but it's, now we've kind of shifted, the pitching staff. We were yelling about the offense needing the star and whatever. And, Shota and Steele are, but it feels like the rotation now is the spot that needs more of that top level lift and not just a big, a list of 1 through 11 of guys who can make starts for you. It's that's great. But when there's only 2 of them that you're feeling like are really great and have that potential, it's all right, okay. I don't know. That's just how I'm feeling, but again, it's
Corey,
they're better. I do feel that way.
The reality is the finances matter. So when we talk about this team, we can't even use that caveat anymore. If it's up to us, we would spend more money. They're going to be at that first tier of the tax. Ownership has said that. So we have to operate that every decision being made is in context of that first tier of the tax. So let's look at where they're currently at. 45 million below that first tier. If you sign Kirby Yates at 15 million, plus Yoan Moncada at 5 million, plus 2 relievers at 3 to 5 million, that puts you 15 million underneath that first tier. It's where they entered the last 2 years, give or take a few million in expectations. So you can't, even in that context, sign a mid-leverage reliever, maybe hoping that he could be your closer in Tanner Scott, 2 relievers to bolster that depth, and a 1-year ticket for Yoan Moncada. You can't simply afford that. You go over that tax. Now, if you want to sign 2 relievers, let's say you want to sign Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott together. Well, that's $30 million right there. Now, let's say you want to get a little bit more certainty for your third base depth. You want to sign someone like Paul DeJong to go across your diamond. You're over the tax already in their projected salaries. You can't even get that starting pitcher. So let's backtrack now. What is Jack Flaherty's projection? 2.5 WAR. Okay. What's Matthew Boyd's projection? In 120 innings, 1.7 WAR. Okay. What's Colin Ray's? 0.6. Okay. Everything's overlapping. So do you want to consolidate the risk in one player or spread it out and give yourself flexibility? Okay. Now the pushback there is, well, what about Corbin Burns? Let's take out Ray. Let's take out Boyd. Let's take out some of these other, $3-5 million contracts that they're going to take. Let's give it all the $35 million to Corbin Burns. It's limiting flexibility for 2026, 2027, reduces the chance of getting someone like Tucker on an extension. And again, you want to risk that with Burns, velocity dip, everything, right? That's the discussion being had.
Yeah, I hear you.
The fallback I have on this is this is the bed that Jets front office made, for good and for bad. I'm not saying that in a negative light, but this is the context they have to operate in. The decisions they've made since 2022 have led them to this point, the longer term extensions, and they have to operate as such. So I don't know the solutions forward. I wish they had more certainty in their starting pitching staff. I really do. Like you, I am a little concerned about James Taillon's age, the ballpark effects. Like you, I'm concerned about Justin Steele's nagging injuries here or there and the inability to have shown in the past to go over 185 innings. I'm also concerned about Shota's sophomore season with the Cubs leading that rotation. I have all those concerns. I just don't know if the solutions to address those concerns exist in the free agent market. And I don't believe it's likely the Cubs can do and fix that through trades, or we would have seen that. And maybe Jets front office just can't accomplish and execute those trades. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's all well said. I mean, that's fair. And again, like I just want to be clear. Like, I think it's been a solid offseason. I think they're a better team.
They're still an 86, 87 win team.
It just is one of those things where, that's what we're here to do, is talk about, could they have done things differently? Should they have done things differently? Things like that. So unfortunately, again, like it is going to be very easy for everybody to say that the solution to, even the problems that you're suggesting are, well, their billionaire owner should give them more money then and make the team better. But alas.
I don't understand all those finances. They had to cut money. They got rid of Schwarber during the process. They got loans like crazy because of the COVID stuff. They got minority private equity stuff going on. Who knows? All I know, I see buildings going up like crazy in Wrigleyville. How is this team not more profitable? So that's kind of like, my fallback. But there is a world.
I know the answer, Brendan.
Yeah. there's a world in which we live that by July and August, if we get lucky, and I'm not using the word lucky with caution, I mean this in every bit of the truth. If we get lucky that the corners are resolved with Bush and Shaw, it changes the trajectory of this team for the next 5 years. Is pre-arb, cost controllable guys for 5 seasons. That would be enormous for their picture. And the icing on top, or the cherry on top, would be PCA just being a 3-win player if the corners are resolved. If you want to get crazy, well, then it's PCA being that 5+ win player. And if those 3 hit, that's like the equivalent of getting blackjack. The next 5 years are set up very, very nicely. And is that a crazy bet to make? No. Does it require luck? In baseball, it does require luck, but it still is possible we end up hitting that in July.
Okay. Yeah. No, I get it, and again, I hope that didn't come off as like, pessimistic or anything. It's just looking back at everything and just sort of wondering like, well, now that we have more information, like, I wonder if they should have done this, or, was this,
I think it is fair. I mean, listen, they're an 86, 87 win team. So bringing up the PCA, Shaw, and Bush stuff is reflected in those projections, right? So it's not as if this is even a playoff contender right now. If you were have told me in 2022 that by 2025 these would be the discussions we're having, I would have been so pissed off. So pissed off. It's just not, it's simply not acceptable to be even taking these risks. It does not, however, discount that the risk being taken can yield long-term fruits for this organization. And that is what Jed has to hope happens, or he's not going to be in a job. So this is the bet he made, man.
Yeah. Well, and, look, even to my earlier point about, the opting for a lot of depth and, rather than the high end guys like that, we've talked about this, Brendan, like that's one of the things that's killed this team. So I do at least appreciate that is it being attempted to be addressed. And, hopefully it'll even feel better if they polish off some of these bullpen moves or whatever else they have working. But we talked about it. I mean, the lack of depth on this team and the wasted roster spaces, it killed them. I mean, it really did damage to their ability to try to compete in the wild card race or the division like you just had. And, I feel like we talked about it, I think last week, but no better illustrated than you had 5 people try to play third base for you last year, and they're all gone. They got rid of all
because
of them.
Nick Madrigal's outs above average was better than Matt Chapman's scoring.
Right.
He's actually a better
So
third baseman.
I do appreciate now again, like, you have to see, like, we could be having a conversation a year from now, like, yeah, that Matthew Boyd thing was not worth the risk. Like, no duh, that didn't work, or he got hurt, knock on wood, whatever, or Colin Ray didn't perform that well. Like they, went back to the council familiarity.
Oh, you can easily see it falling apart.
Yeah. So it's like, these things may not work. Maybe Carson Kelly suffers a similar fate to Yan Gomes. He's not nearly
you can
as
see
old,
that work
but
out too.
could just fall off the table. But I think the logic of some of these moves in terms of cleaning up the bottom of your roster feels fine.
Maybe Kyle Tucker's like Trey Mancini,
Well, that was a level I wasn't even thinking, but
sorry, I had to go dark.
Former Astro.
I had to go dark.
I'm just saying. Or did he go to the Astros after the Cubs?
I forget. I think it was before.
Yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting. I think the key though is like they have to polish off some of these moves. I feel like. Yeah, well, I mean, if you talk to the most pessimistic amongst us, they don't think so. But yeah, like they have to polish that off. I think if you're able to supplement this bullpen with some reliable guys, I think you'd feel pretty good about where they're at there and going into the year. The roster is not going to be without risk. And are they going to, kind of fully answer the call that we've put out to them of like, it should be projected as like a surefire playoff team. That needs possible to be the standard. I don't know that they're going to get there, but
everyone always talks about 90 wins as a threshold. That's such a stupid threshold. That's still not good enough. The threshold for a surefire win is 95 plus 90. Well, to be specific, 97. It's not going to happen, right? So I don't want to hear about get to 90. Like a crease. You go from basically the 30th percentile bad outcome to like the 35th to 40th. It's almost negligible for me at that point. So all the discussions we've had, I've been trying to inch towards that 95 win goal. And that is the pre-arb Matt Shaw at third base and Bush at first base and PC, et cetera. That's how you get to the 95 plus. I don't want to be talking about 90 plus as the threshold. That's a low standard.
Well, and, I think where we'll leave it is, it's about how do we get there from now? Like this is how they operated. This is how the budget is. This is the decisions the front office has made. And, we're getting close to transitioning to this team's going to play baseball games. So how do we take the group that they have and we're not doing the work, but how do Craig Counsell, Tommy Hotovy, and these guys take this group and win a damn division that they have been, iced out of for several years.
Can Craig Counsell play third base still? Could he be the depth player manager?
They never let Ross catch when he was the manager, so I'm assuming that's
he probably would have been a better catcher than Tucker Barnhart, I think.
I don't think that's a question, but anyway, it'll be interesting. I'm again, it's a weird spot. I feel better about the team and where they're at, but I think I'd obviously like to feel even better.
This is the high. I will say this is the highest. It's the highest ceiling they've had since the mid 2010s. It really is. Like the ceiling with PCA.
Well, that's a pretty low bar, isn't it?
It is. I'm not, but that's the bar we're talking about.
No, well, and look, like, you want them to get better. Did they get better enough? That's a separate question.
No, they did not get better enough.
Yeah, they did not. But
doesn't mean it's still interesting.
I think they're better. And, look, like a lot of this, I think if we're sitting here in August and we're talking about, which PCA, Kyle Tucker, which of them is going to win the MVP because they're just like so valuable.
We got PCA and MVP discussions now.
Yeah.
now you're getting a little too optimistic over there.
Sure. We'll see. But Cubs cons this weekend. I hope everybody going has a good time. It's always sort of, one of those like first, okay, the season's around the corner. Like we're getting to know the current roster and, really transitioning things from last year into the coming season. We've got a new uniform apparently. So we'll see how everything goes. But all told, you know, despite working through it all, like I said a moment ago, like they've got to finish off the offseason. Jed, you know, even the other day, saying offseason's not done, we still have more to do. Like that had better be the case. I don't know how much under that first tier they're going to spend, but if that's what the cap is, I hope they spend nearly all of it. And the only reason they're saving some is to, you know, make moves at the deadline to secure their spot in the playoffs and try to win a World Series. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the rest of the offseason goes. As always, appreciate your support. Brendan and I will talk to you next week. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.